I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch network. The video you are about to watch is part of a series of videos that I've made here at the MeidasTouch network. And I've said this before, but I believe to be the most important videos that we have made here at MeidasTouch. And so what I ask you to do is watch the full video and make sure to share and comment if the content that you're hearing applies to you. And in this video series, we highlight people who used to be part of the Republican Party, but who have left. And they have left because of the extremism, the fascism, the weirdness, or for whatever the other reasons are, the taking away of your freedoms, the cruelty, the list goes on. But there is a huge population here in the United States of America of people who are just rejecting MAGA extremism. Former Republicans, independents, people who hadn't voted before, who goes, you know what? We need to preserve our democracy. We highlight and share those stories here, and we ask that you share them in the comments below, and we ask you please share this video with others that you know to get the word out. And this all began when we at MeidasTouch put out a tweet, and the tweet said, normal Republicans are being pushed out of the GOP in droves. They are being labeled rhinos and traitors by a fascist MAGA movement that bears no relation to conservatism. Many of these Republicans will be voting blue. Do you have a similar story? Share it with us. And so we got thousands of responses to that tweet. So we made a YouTube video about it, part 1 of Republicans leaving in a mass exodus away from the MAGA extremist party that the Republican Party has become. And in part 1, we got tens and thousands of responses, and then we did a part 2, and we did a part 3, and we did a part 4, and we did a part 5, over 1 million views, over 20,000 comments of people sharing their stories, and we like to highlight the stories. So this is part 6-1 of this series. So many comments that we will do a 6-2 of the series as well. But let's highlight some of these stories. And again, if you have a similar story, if you know someone, whether it is a family member, yourself, a neighbor, a community member, a colleague, a coworker, whoever you know, and they have a similar story, share it here and let's talk about it. And I want to spread the message as well to others who are thinking about leaving, that there is this compassionate pro-democracy community out here of people who want to solve problems and try to do our best to improve the conditions of our country, but do it with love and compassion, devoid of hate, and truly focused on our Constitution and what makes our country and the American experiment so special. So Helen McKinney writes, my husband and I were both hardcore evangelical Republicans, but we could no longer remain affiliated with any organization or vote for any candidate who supported lies, slander, hate, divisiveness, and racism. We were forced to reevaluate everything we thought we believed and realized that the Democrats were the party that represented our core values of love, compassion, equality, and truth. We are now both proud to be Democrats. And thank you, Helen, for sharing that. Michael Gagowski writes, I'm a disabled veteran that proudly served this country. I voted for Republicans and Democrats. I voted for the person I thought would run this country right and followed the Constitution. However, since Donald Trump took office and I've seen what's happened to the Republican Party, I will be voting straight Democrat. Thank you for your show. And thanks, Michael, for sharing your story. MPH writes, I was raised to be a misogynist, a racist, a homophobe, and an anti-Semite. In other words, a Republican. When I rejected all of that fear and hatred, I felt like a new person. Thanks for sharing. Mel Sockman writes, my friend's mother was a hardcore Republican. She would campaign and help with the counting of votes here in Ohio. So my friend was following in her mom's footsteps and backed them also. Until now. Myself, for some reason, I have never been a fan of Dump. Now I understand why, but I kept on my friend about the BS Dump was spreading during the pandemic, and then the insurrection happened, and I'm happy to say she's a Democrat today. Being a veteran and knowing what the Oath Keepers and others had done convinced her. Thanks for sharing, Mel. Susan Peters writes, this was such a good program. I, at 69, was a Republican. At the time when politics were intelligent discussions about policies affecting our nation. But I switched when this evil monster showed his true colors and the current Republican, quote, leaders failed to stand up for what they know to be ethically right. I felt very uplifted by your comments. Yes, truth is the answer. Let it prevail. I couldn't agree more, Susan. Catherine Hickok writes, my mom is 98 years old and still sharp. Incredible. She has voted Republican all her life until Trump came along. She is now voting Democrat and joined the rest of the family. Thanks for your hard work explaining complicated legal issues. You're welcome, Catherine. Jack writes, a good old friend of mine since childhood has a mother that's been Republican since we met around 11 years old, over 20 years ago. She voted Bush, Romney, McCain, sat out 2016, and finally voted for Biden after seeing Trump's first term and the direction of Republicans in general recently. And she's staunchly religious, Christian, and conservative in most other respects. Thanks, Jack. Elizabeth Mitchell writes, okay, Ben, thank you for all your efforts. I and my entire family were raised staunch Republicans, but most of us got together and changed our party affiliation from GOP to undeclared, along with many of our close friends. We are all voting blue due to Trump and the MAGA mess party. We are still trying to educate some of the family and friends who still are GOP, and they are starting to listen. None of our family and friends who are still registered GOP are MAGA mess GOP, but they are perplexed, sad, and grieving over the destruction of the GOP party by Trump. They will probably vote blue while crying their hearts out. Thanks for sharing, Elizabeth. JRA Jeff writes, hi, Ben. I am a former Republican, and I'm sad to say I voted for Trump in 2016, as I was not aware of who he really was and what he would do to the party and, more important, the country. I switched to the Democratic Party in 2017 and have voted straight blue since then. While I don't agree with all the policies of the Democratic Party, my principles are much more aligned with the Democrats. I am a retired military officer and am appalled at the lunatics and criminality of Trump and his minions. Thanks for what you are doing. I am a 62-year-old male and voted Republican most of my adult life. Never again. Thanks, Jeff, and thanks for your service. Artistic Alexis writes, I met and married my Orthodox Jewish husband in 2017. He almost voted Trump in 2016, living in Florida, but since his voting precinct was in a church, he decided not to vote. After we met, he started to see why Trump was so bad, but really saw the truth about the rest of the Republicans after we had a disabled son in 2018, after 6 months inpatient during the pregnancy. Seeing them try to cut the Affordable Care Act and Medicaid expansion, seeing the hatred and racism, learning more about their corruption, dealing with anti-COVID policies influenced by wackos who were a direct risk to our highly at-risk son and me, as well as the many other things that make them awful. He's so much a believer in blue ideals now that I recently heard him trying to convince his MAGA brother in Brooklyn, where the former guy is popular amongst Orthodox Jews there. I was so proud of him talking about real issues like racist and bad policing and BLM protests, January 6th insurrection, and more. He now votes blue, not just for my sake, because he knows how I despise the maggots, but because he believes in the progressive ideas behind them. Thanks so much for sharing that. And Karen Massey writes, my friend has been Republican all her life. She voted all Democrat to avoid anyone connected to or at all like Trump. So glad we have some realistic people who have seen Trump's lies and crooked acts. Thanks, Karen Massey, for sharing that. And so as we hear these stories, it is important that if you have a story like this, please put it in the comments now. Share this video. Share this video with people who may be unsure of where they are voting, or maybe they are still identifying themselves as Republicans and just don't know about the extremism. What I think is so important, and what I say about why I am a Democrat, I'm not a Democrat because I love the donkey logo or I just think the Democrats a great team and no matter what the Democrats do, I'm going to support them. Absolutely not. You know, and I think there's a lot of things with the Democrats that I may disagree with. I may disagree with them on this policy or that policy, or how far does this initiative go, or the timing of an initiative, or how to reach an outcome. But ultimately, I believe that the outcome we are trying to reach in the Democratic Party is one that helps Americans. And I believe the Democrats are adults in the rooms grappling with hard problems. And when you grapple with hard problems and you have to try to reach compromises and figure out how to reach solutions, that could be difficult. But the Democratic Party is the only major political party engaged in that adult, intelligent exercise. And it's certainly the only political party that supports our democracy. You know, it's just so critical on the issues that we're fighting for things that 99.99% of Americans should care about. How do we make healthcare more affordable to Americans? How do we make healthcare more accessible to Americans? How do we reduce sky-high prescription drug prices? Democrats consistently are introducing legislation to do that, to lower the costs of healthcare, to make healthcare more accessible, and Republicans are constantly fighting against it, to try to increase the cost of healthcare, to try to take away healthcare, and that's not fear-mongering, that's just the reality. They're introducing bills and will introduce bills if they take power to repeal Obamacare, to repeal the Affordable Care Act, which gave health insurance to more than 23, 25, close to 30 million Americans who wouldn't have health insurance. Republicans want to take that away. It's not fear-mongering. They are introducing bills to do that. Republican MAGA groups are filing legislation as we speak, or filing lawsuits, rather, as we speak. In addition to legislation filing, they're filing lawsuits as we speak to try to repeal the Obamacare, to repeal the Affordable Care Act. They're trying to figure out ways to jack up prescription prices. They're trying to find ways to make it difficult for people to get drugs that they need to save their lives, like insulin, and make it hard to get. I mean, heck, you saw in the debate, you have Herschel Walker being asked a serious question about how do we make the price of insulin cheaper? And he said to people they need to eat better. And he's not focused on reducing prescription drug prices. That's not just what Herschel Walker, the MAGA Republican, says. That's what they believe in general. It's what all MAGA Republicans believe. You know, when Democrats were trying to figure out ways, how do we make education more affordable? How do we make education more accessible? How do we increase wages for Americans? You know, Republicans are fighting to keep a minimum wage as minimum as possible, where people can survive. Democrats are not just fighting for a living wage. Democrats are fighting for a wage that you can have that's a wage of dignity, a wage that you don't need to work multiple jobs, or that multiple people in the family need to work multiple jobs in order to afford a house. Democrats are trying to pass legislation that does that, and Republicans across the board are trying to block that. I believe people should be paid with dignity. I believe people should have jobs that have dignity, and people who get sick should have sick leave, and people who should have the right time to take maternity leave or paternity leave. Republicans mock that. Republicans make fun of leave to take care of children. There's no joke. That's what they do. We need to figure out ways to make the work environment an environment of dignity for Americans so that we could all have jobs that we're proud of, that we could all afford homes to live in, that we're not worried about foreclosure or worried about being able to buy a house or send our kids to school. Those are things that Democrats are fighting for. Democrats are fighting to try to help and improve unions, while Republicans are just fighting for the billionaire who runs the corporation and their rights. The entire Republican economic policy, if you want to even say they have a policy, there's two things. There's one, they're all about the cult. You have to praise the cult leader. You have to be an ass kisser, and you have to worship Donald Trump, which is just so weird and deranged. And at these rallies, that's one. And as part of that, you have to deny elections. You have to spread conspiracies and all this weird stuff. But if you want to say what is one policy that they have, this trickle-down economics theory, which doesn't work and has never worked before. But this idea that all of the benefits, all of the benefits that we have should go to the billionaires and the decamillionaires, because the hope is by focusing on them and giving them more yachts and more mansions. And by the way, if you work hard and you achieve a level of success in a capitalist system, yes, there should be, I'm not hating on the ability to become a high-level position and to make good money. Absolutely. But the question is, are we going to manipulate our tax system to give unfair advantages to people who are already decamillionaires and billionaires so that they can get 5 private jets and 10 homes and all of these other benefits and perks? And then when they need to get bailed out, sure, bail them out. And then the moment that the Democrats try to come up with a very targeted relief, like student debt relief, which would remove about $10,000 of debt for people making less than $125,000 of their student debt. Every Republican group, they file lawsuits everywhere trying to challenge that and trying to stop that from going into effect. But at the same time, they bail out the billionaires and they bail out all of the bankers when they get into trouble. They're the first people who get bailed out. Just give them free money. That's not okay. We need to address issues like adults here. We need to focus on all Americans as well. And that's why I'm a Democrat. And we could have differences and nuances and policies, and maybe you think, this should be the tax rate versus that tax rate. I welcome those conversations, and Democrats are having those conversations. But as I look to what this MAGA Republican Party is, as I look to what they are, it is weird cult behavior, dangerous cult behavior. They're led by a cult leader. He goes on his social media platform. He threatens judges. He does weird memes of himself. He puts out QAnon stuff every single day. You wake up, there's 60, 70 posts this deranged individual makes worshiping QAnon and posting QAnon logos and slogans on him. He's the leader of a political party. I welcome the day where we could have intelligent adult conversations about policies. I welcome that day. I welcome a day where there's 2 normal political parties who actually support our democracy. That is just not what's taking place right now. And I do think it is important, though, as well. One of the reasons I so admire the pro-democracy community, while I'm proud of it, I'm proud of the community we have here at MeidasTouch, is that it's a community of compassion. It's a community of love. It's a community of trying to help other people live their lives with dignity. We're not, you watch some of these rallies and it's all about wagging their finger at these people and immigrants and LGBTQ plus and minority groups and anti-Semitic tropes and supporting white supremacist groups on the MAGA side. It's all hate in their heart. And it's just so vital that we approach all of this with compassion, that we fight for what we believe in, that we fight for the ideals of our country, that we don't back down. but also that we let people know that we want to help. We want to build this together. There's no one above the law. We need to treat everybody with dignity and respect. And it is just so vital right now, more than ever, that we do that. And look, it may be hard sometimes to extend an olive branch to someone who is identifying still to this day, or on the fence, especially maybe before the insurrection or after the insurrection, like how are you going to these rallies? But I still think it's important right now that we don't just totally ostracize people, that we do let people know, hey, there's this other community out here, and we want to let you know that we support the Constitution, we love our country, we support our troops, we love our Constitution. We think that there's ways to make the country better. There's ways to improve. There, of course, been mistakes that have been made in the past that we can try to improve on, correct, become a more perfect union. Focus on all of that. And so I think it's important that we extend that olive branch, let people know that there is this other community, and share this video. Let people know there's a way out. There's a way out. There's a way to remove. You saw some of those comments when they started supporting this pro-democracy community. Just the way they felt was so much better, and so much better. Anyway, I'm Ben Meiselas from the MeidasTouch Network. Thank you for watching this. Please share your comments, share this video. Please spread the word. I would greatly appreciate it. And share these comments. And please comment below with your story or stories that you have. It goes a long way, I promise you. Hit the subscribe button now. We're on our way to 1 million subscribers thanks to your support. And check us out at patreon.com/MeidasTouch, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. There's lots of great exclusive content on our Patreon website. And most importantly, though, it helps grow this independent media platform. We're not funded by billionaires or millionaires. We have no outside investors. So we are purely funded with your generosity and powered by democracy. There's great exclusive content there, but by going there, most importantly, you'll help us grow. Patreon, patreon.com/MeidasTouch. Until next time, I'm Ben Meiselas.
This November is Rovember. MeidasTouch just released its brand new collection of Rovember t-shirts and pins to let the country know what's at stake this upcoming midterm election. Go to store.MeidasTouch.com to grab yours. That's store.MeidasTouch.com.